All right, so you know those hockey game reports? The ones that just list out goals and penalties? Well, get ready because today we're diving into one that's way more interesting than it might seem at first glance.
You're telling me?
Yeah.
Most people see these reports and their eyes glaze over, but trust me, they're like a treasure map for understanding a team's true potential.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me. What's the backstory here? What are we digging into?
So we're talking about the Utrecht Dragons. This is their season opener, September 21st, 2024.
Home game, right? At De Vexaben.
You got it. Facing off against the Smoke Eaters Geleen.
And the score? Let me guess, a nail-biter finish.
Not exactly. The Dragons won, and they won big. We're talking 11-1.
11-1. Well, it sounds like a pretty clear-cut win.
Sure, on paper, it looks like a blowout. But remember, this is ERE003, meaning it's still super early in the season.
Good point. Everyone's still finding their rhythm, so maybe there's more to this story than just a lopsided score.
Exactly. And that's where things get interesting.
Okay, so 11 goals, that's a statement win, right? You've got to be happy with that kind of offensive explosion, especially for the first game of the season.
Oh, absolutely. It shows they've got some serious firepower. But, the scoring summary, it's like a highlight reel. It doesn't tell the whole story.
All right, so let's rewind a bit. What are we missing?
Well, those 11 goals, they weren't exactly spread out evenly. Look closer at the third period. That's when things really blew open. Almost like the Dragons suddenly decided to step on the gas.
You're right. 7 goals in one period. That's wild. And then there's the penalty minutes, right?
Exactly. Almost twice as many as Geleen.
Which makes you wonder, are we seeing a team that plays on the edge? A little bit of that rough and tumble style to get the win.
That's the big question, isn't it? And here's something else to think about. Remember when Geleen scored their one and only goal?
Let me see. Okay, yeah. 59.09 in the third. Literally the last minute of the game.
Right. So even when they were down by 10 goals, they were still fighting, still hungry for that goal. Tells you a lot about their tenacity.
That's a really good point. You wouldn't blame them for just giving up at that point, but they didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the score might scream blowout, but when you factor in the timing of those goals, the penalty minutes, suddenly you've got a more complex picture emerging.
It's like there's a whole other layer of strategy and maybe even a bit of aggression we need to unpack.
Right. And speaking of unpacking, you asked about that Who-Els source I sent over.
Oh, man, I was hoping you'd bring that up. I've got to be honest, I took one look at that and thought, what in the world is this?
It's a gold mine. It's a website, basically, that tracks player stats, but for certain leagues,
True.
And it's especially helpful for getting a read on those players who might not be on everyone's radar yet.
Oh, I see. So it's like a scouting report for up-and-coming players.
Exactly. And it's packed with details you won't find in your average game report. Take Montgomery, for example. 2 goals, 2 assists. Yeah, the guy was on fire.
A 4-point night. That's huge.
Exactly. And what's cool is that with this Who-Els source, we can see that some of these guys are really young, like born in 2005, 2006, 2007.
So we could be looking at the start of some amazing careers, like Ramses van Brunschock, 2 goals in his very first Eredivisie game. 17. That's impressive.
And that's the beauty of this source. It provides that context, makes those stats even more meaningful.
It really makes you wonder what these young players will accomplish as they gain more experience. But all this offensive firepower brings up a question about the Dragons goalie. Eline Gabriel played the entire game for Utrecht. That seems a little unusual for a game with such a lopsided score.
It's definitely something to consider. Was she truly challenged throughout the game? Did those penalties put extra pressure on her? We're left wondering if those few saves she had to make were extra spectacular because of Geleen's constant pressure.
It's amazing how much we can learn from just one game report, huh?
Right. It's like we're piecing together a puzzle.
Totally. And some pieces are more obvious than others. Like, we can't ignore all those penalty minutes.
Definitely not. Roughing, unsportsmanlike conduct, even a misconduct penalty. That's saying something.
It definitely makes you wonder about the Dragons' playing style. Is this their usual MO?
It's too early to tell, for sure. Could be an early season thing, teams still feeling each other out.
Yeah, that's true. But still, to rack up that many penalties, even in a game they're dominating, makes you wonder if they could lose their cool in a closer match.
Exactly. Imagine a tied game, the clock ticking down.
All that pressure.
Will those penalties come back to haunt them? Or will that intensity give them the edge? Guess we'll have to wait and see.
That's what makes this so exciting. We've gone way beyond just who won and lost.
Right. We're talking about team dynamics, strategy, even a little bit of psychology.
Yeah. And isn't that the best part about these deep dives? We start with something seemingly straightforward, but by the end.
We've uncovered a whole world of possibilities.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive. We hope you enjoyed this closer look.
Remember, folks, there's always more to the story than meets the eye. So keep those game reports coming.